Canada, stretching from the Pacific to the Atlantic, sits on a hidden volcanic region. Beneath its mountains and forests are ancient magma systems once thought to be extinct.
Well, big news from scientists who focus on the oceans. 2 new studies highlighting some dramatic and much different activity underwater. One of them relatively close to home for some of us. Just 400 kilometers west of Vancouver, an underwater volcano has been erupting.
Canada, located across the northern half of North America and stretching from the Pacific to the Atlantic and deep into the Arctic Circle, sits atop one of the most misunderstood geological regions on Earth. Beneath its endless forests, jagged coastlines, and towering mountain chains, from British Columbia's volcanic arc to Yukon's glacier-cut valleys, lies a hidden corridor of ancient magma systems long believed to be extinct. For decades, Canada's volcanoes were dismissed as quiet relics, overshadowed by the famous firestorms of the Cascades and Alaska. But in late 2025, everything changed. Without warning, satellites detected sudden heat signatures, the ground began to ripple, and steam plumes rose from peaks that had slept for thousands of years. Within hours, scientists issued a Level 5 volcanic alert, a declaration so rare and so severe that it stunned even veteran geologists. Across Western Canada, a chain of volcanoes once written off as dead began showing unmistakable signs of awakening. The question now gripping the nation is unavoidable. How does a supposedly stable land suddenly shift into volcanic threat? And why now, after millennia of silence? As warnings echo across British Columbia and Yukon, a deeper mystery emerges beneath the ice, rock, and forests. Is Canada facing a brief geological tremor, or the opening chapter of a far more dangerous awakening? Chapter 1: Canada, Volcano Chain. Stretching from the windswept west coast to the edge of the Yukon, the Canadian landmass is carved by vast mountain ranges, deep valleys, and scars left by tectonic violence once thought to be history. These are regions shaped by volcanism, though in most imaginations that story had long ago ended. Here, in the shadows of celebrated volcanoes in the US, Pacific Northwest, Canada's own sleeping behemoths slumber under snow and forest cover. The most famous, the Garibaldi Volcanic Belt, traces a path through the heart of British Columbia, running close to many bustling communities. Mount Meager, Mount Garibaldi, and the striking Mount Cayley rise in silent grandeur, their flanks draped in mist and legend, but rarely seen as threats. Yet, for generations, these volcanoes have warranted little attention. Their slopes attract hikers and explorers, often unaware of the dynamic landscape beneath their feet. Further north, the Tagish volcanic fields of the Yukon, the Wells Grey Clearwater volcanic field in British Columbia, and the stony ridges near Atlin all serve as reminders that this land was once dominated by fire. For the casual traveller among British Columbia's remote forests, little betrays the violence once forged here. From a distance, satellite imagery has revealed jagged volcanic scars and cones, set in contrast against dense green woods and luminous lakes fed with ancient snowmelt. In Mount Meager's valleys, streams wind past deposits left by pyroclastic flows, their beds quietly telling stories centuries in the making. Why do volcano chains form in certain places? The answer lies deep beneath, in the movement of tectonic plates, massive segments of the Earth's crust that drift and clash over ages. Just south of the border, the Cascadia subduction zone is infamous for earthquakes and volcanic activity, drawing the Pacific plate under the North American plate and driving magma upward. Simultaneously, deep hotspots remain steady beneath the moving crust, etching volcanic chains as the continent passes overhead. These processes unfold over spans of hundreds of thousands, even millions of years. Yet their signature is everywhere. Wide calderas, crater lakes, and ancient lava flows still mark the landscape. Even the very soil of Canada's western valleys carries the memory of powerful eruptions, infused with minerals from volcanic ash and lending unusual fertility to the land. Throughout history, such volcanic outbursts shaped the region. Eruptions would darken noonday, shroud valleys, and force rivers into new courses. But for the last 10 millennia, Canada's volcanoes have remained largely silent. As centuries have rolled by, communities sprouted below, comforted by the lack of living memory of eruptive destruction. But is the label extinct ever truly final for volcanoes? Could a long quiet chain, thought to be a relic of prehistory, once again stir, choosing its moment without any human notice? Chapter 2. Canada. Early warnings. For those paying close attention, subtle changes signaled a shift long before the Level 5 alert. In 2018, researchers noted a rise in geyser activity, rare hydrothermal eruptions never before clearly linked to major magmatic shifts. Earthquakes of increasing frequency and strength were logged across the Pacific Northwest, drawing interest from geologists as far apart as Vancouver and small settlements in the Yukon. At times, even local wildlife seemed to react. In secluded valleys, animal migration routes began to shift. Waters clouded with trace minerals from newly warmed springs altered the course of salmon runs, impacting indigenous traditions that have been observed for thousands of years. To some, it seemed as if the landscape was restless, shaking off centuries of stillness. Many still doubted that Canada's volcanoes were anything more than ancient scenery. While geyser activity is dramatic, it is not always directly connected to magma movement. Was there any cause for broader worry? That changed in the fall of 2025. New satellite readings uncovered vivid thermal signals, broad, intense pulses scattered from Mount Cayley to isolated volcanic cones deep in the wilderness. The land was swelling in slight but unmistakable cycles, suggesting that magma was pushing upward, flexing the crust with new force. Seismic stations, quiet for decades, began to register flurries of activity. Minor earthquakes clustered in unusual patterns around long-dormant peaks. Gases, sulfur-laden and acrid, emerged from fissures sealed for centuries. Fleets of drones sent to study these sites returned images of evolving topography. Fresh cracks, deformed slopes, and steaming vents invisible from ground level. World geological authorities met as they realized the weight of these developments. The resulting Level 5 volcanic alert was not just a local headline, but an international alarm. Had the fuse on a volcanic chain, dismissed as sleeping, been relit? Why did these warnings linger so long unheard? Was it the sheer vastness and remoteness of Canada's wilds, or a collective underestimation of the threat? And what of other corners of the Earth? Are we missing signs of awakening elsewhere? Chapter 3. Canada. Tectonic shift. How could volcanoes long declared dormant become active once more? The newest research suggests the answer is found deeper within the continent than previously imagined. Forces both ancient and active operate beneath Canada as tectonic boundaries gradually evolve. Recent studies describe the peeling of the continent at plate boundaries, thin layers of crust stripped away over time, enabling fresh magma to access pathways toward the surface. In this process, hotspots deep in the mantle remain fixed, while the moving North American continent passes over them, leaving a linear chain of volcanoes in their wake. The implications are profound. Areas far from classical plate boundaries can, under the right conditions, become volcanically reactivated. Why is this happening now? Some scientists posit that these are natural fluctuations in the vast, slow cycles of tectonic activity, while others search for evidence of more fundamental shifts beneath North America's crust. In similar moments through history, episodic volcanic flares have coincided with periods of crustal fracturing and shifting, suggesting that many dead volcanoes are merely dormant, awaiting changes in the deep mantle. Water also plays a vital role. Subducting oceanic plates drag down massive quantities of water, weakening the crust and creating pockets ripe for magma to gather. Sudden fractures, perhaps triggered by distant seismic events, allow the pent-up magma to rise. These combined factors conspire to create geological reversals. Volcanoes thought to be extinct, displaying sudden signs of life. Yellowstone provides a striking comparison, a system fueled by a mantle hotspot that's persisted for millions of years. Scientists are now investigating whether Canada's mountainous interior holds hidden hotspots of similar scale and longevity, their true outlines lost beneath vast forests and ancient rock. South of the border, the Cascade Range, the home of Mount Hood and many of the Pacific Northwest's most notorious volcanoes, is always watched for signs of unrest. But patterns recorded in 2025 show seismic disturbances and subtle deformations extending ever farther north. As Canada's geology undergoes new scrutiny, the lines between subduction-driven and hotspot-driven volcanism blur, hinting at a complex, interconnected system that spans the continent. Could these phenomena be reflective of global tectonic readjustments rather than local anomalies? Is it possible that the same forces at work beneath Canada might someday awaken volcanic arcs in other world regions, and without forewarning? Chapter 4: Canada. Seismic link. Concerns escalated when a major earthquake rattled the Oregon coast, not far from one of the most active volcanoes in the Pacific Northwest. The shock waves traveled great distances, reaching into southern Canada, their impact felt in seismic data and public unease alike. Scientists noted that the quake's timing corresponded with a rise in volcanic activity and energy release, a scenario they'd long considered unlikely, but not impossible. Though the earthquake's primary cause was shifting tectonic plates beneath the Pacific, some hypothesized it could be part of a larger chain reaction, a reverberation traveling up through North America's volcanic spine. At around the same time, several of Canada's typically quiet geysers erupted spectacularly, in a manner not seen since activity increased in 2018. These events captured the world's attention, even as the geyser activity appeared to subside, hinting that deeper, more fundamental changes were underway. Communication between Canadian and US scientists intensified, tracking the migration of seismic swarms through the Cascade Range and northward into Canada's own volcanic fields. The Wells Grey Clearwater volcanic field in particular became a focus, combining remoteness and geologic potential. Armed with drones, sensors, and portable seismographs, researchers scoured the area, noting newly detected gas emissions and ground deformation, subtle but impossible to ignore. Communities in Vancouver felt mild tremors, while seismometers in Whitehorse registered ground movement unseen for decades. Geothermal wells in the Yukon began to fluctuate in temperature and pressure, indicating a reactivation of ancient hydrothermal systems. It became increasingly clear that what began in Oregon could be part of a much broader sequence, potentially interlinking geophysical phenomena across the Pacific edge and deep into the Canadian wilderness. The question persisted: are we witnessing the prelude to a wider volcanic resurgence stretching from Oregon to the Arctic? When waking volcanoes answer each other's tremors, what keeps the chain reaction in check, and will it? Chapter 5: Canada Eruption Legacy. Understanding the significance of these recent stirrings demands a look into the past, when these volcanoes last erupted with force. Mount Meaga, the site of Canada's most recent major eruption, some 2,350 years ago, left indelible marks, covering regions with ash and transforming rivers. Traces of those powerful blasts remain hidden beneath forests and sediment, a dormant warning. The soils and sediments of valleys bear silent records. Beds of ash, broken rock, and altered topography created by long-ago eruptions. Indigenous oral histories speak of a world changed overnight by the mountains, of rivers blocked by landslides and winds carrying burning ash. Archaeological digs at these sites tell stories of life interrupted, campsites abruptly buried, tools and food stores locked beneath thick volcanic debris. By the time settlers arrived from Europe, these volcanoes had been quiet for centuries. With each passing generation, memories of their force faded, replaced by a reputation for scenic beauty and remote adventure. But volcanoes operate on timeframes far exceeding human memory. For them, centuries of silence may signify nothing more than a pause. Canada's awakened volcanoes recall a simple fact: long periods without eruptions do not imply safety, and the record of past eruptions demands respect in the present. What would happen if an eruption of ancient scale took place in an era of highways, cities, and digital economies? The current awakening is not just a threat. It is a lesson about preparedness and humility before nature. Chapter 6: Canada Monitoring Tech. Canada's response in 2025 draws on an unprecedented array of technology. Networks of seismic stations now feed back real-time data. Drones hover above vulnerable peaks, collecting samples and mapping emissions. Satellites provide comprehensive tracking of ground deformation, keeping close watch on even the most remote zones. Yet, all this information brings new challenges. The abundance of data sometimes clouds the picture as much as it clarifies. Models can lag behind evolving events. Complex geologic phenomena often outstrip our abilities to predict them. Still, the vast datasets coming from Canada's volcanoes reveal the magnitude of what we don't know. Sensor data has exposed subtle ground swelling, not only signaling moving magma, but suggesting possible new chambers forming far below. Gas analyzers have detected spikes of sulfur and carbon dioxide rarely measured in the region before, signs that old volcanic conduits may be reopening. Communities closest to the volcanoes now rely on mobile alerts and live updates. Social media buzzes with real-time rumors, satellite images, and drone videos, while officials struggle with the tension between providing timely warnings and avoiding unnecessary panic. The ground, still for so long, now pulses with subtle signs of life, a silent message both terrifying and mesmerizing. Is technology alone enough to safeguard communities against such ancient forces? Or does our flood of information sometimes only deepen our sense of vulnerability? Chapter 7: Canada Community Impact. In settlements along the volcanic belt, daily life continues but is coloured by uncertainty. Residents of Pemberton Valley, Squamish, and numerous communities in British Columbia and the Yukon begin each day with a new awareness of their environment. What was once an almost mythical hazard now demands practical attention. Schools and workplaces hold regular emergency drills. Authorities distribute ash masks, plan evacuation routes through challenging terrain, and remind citizens to keep emergency supplies ready. For many, these are measures previously thought unnecessary, now vital. Farmers question how their crops might fare beneath the shadow of ashfall, while residents worry whether future eruptions could trigger landslides, floods, or infrastructure collapses. Despite these anxieties, community spirit grows stronger. People exchange information and resources, reviving old traditions of mutual support. Importantly, a renewed respect rises for Indigenous knowledge, with elders sharing generations-old stories of volcanic land. These stories become valuable sources for scientists and emergency planners alike. In schools, children learn not only the science of volcanology, but the cultural stories of living on a volatile land. Cities see volcano-inspired art, science debates in classrooms, and businesses selling volcano-safe masks and survival kits. Information apps distribute ash forecasts and route guides. Through it all, a new sense of relationship with the landscape emerges, one mixed with fear, awe, and a drive to adapt. Does the presence of sleeping giants in the backyard bring only worry? Or can it foster resilience and connection, an enduring sense of place forged in the shadow of risk? Chapter 8: Canada Science Wake Up. Canada's volcanic awakening is a lesson for scientists and civil society alike. It prompts a shift in global perspective. Are other extinct volcanoes due for renewed attention? Risk assessments and research conferences rapidly centre on the Canadian case, as agencies and academics update models to account for newly detected risks. Earth scientists reconsider assumptions. If long-dormant volcanoes can awaken suddenly, what other dead fields worldwide should we watch? The interplay of plate tectonics, hidden mantle plumes, and deep peeling at continental edges opens urgent lines of inquiry. Governments too recognise disruption, from impacts on aviation to possible interruptions of agriculture and trade. A major eruption would carry consequences well beyond Canada. How then does a society prepare for an unpredictable future, with only fragmentary historical guidance? In facing this uncertainty, we are reminded that human planning must coexist with the planet's rhythms, both humble and adaptive. Chapter 9: Canada Future Risks. As Canada's sleeping giants stir, the world finds itself watching a familiar landscape in an entirely new way. Will these awakenings culminate in dramatic eruptions, or will the rumblings fade, leaving behind only questions? The answers, as ever, remain in the hands of deep, ancient forces beneath our feet. Still, from mountain passes and dense forests to towns and cities, the truth is indisputable. The land is alive and changing, reshaped not just by eons past, but by events unfolding before our own eyes. The saga of Canada's volcanoes is no longer only ancient history. It is a story lived day by day, one measured in tremors, alerts, and a growing sense of wonder. What grabs your attention most in this drama of sleeping giants? Earth's power, scientific mysteries, or the resourcefulness of communities on the edge? As researchers work to decipher new signals and families plan for the unknown, one thing stands clear: this story, like the land itself, is far from over. Let us know your thoughts and questions in the comments below. Are you following the alerts? What would you do if your city faced the possibility of volcanic awakening? Stay tuned for ongoing updates as we continue exploring the science, stories, and people reshaping our understanding of this restless planet. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications for more journeys into the world's unexplored natural wonders. Until next time, watch the mountains, listen for the rumble beneath, and remember, every sleeping giant has its day.